My name is Josie Kim, and welcome to the Global View podcast. Today's episode will explore voter disenfranchisement and its effect on democracy through an exclusive interview with Neil Volz, the Deputy Director of the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition. So, to start off, could you please introduce yourself and feel free to include information about your background and position?
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. My name is Neil Volz. I'm the Deputy Director of the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition. We're an organization that's best known for the passage of Amendment 4 in 2018 that restored the ability to vote for nearly 1.5 million people with past felony convictions in the state of Florida. It was the largest expansion of democracy in our country since the Civil Rights Movement. And it was led by folks who actually were impacted by the criminal justice system. So, myself, other people who helped lead the effort. We're people with past convictions, and so we're still working to make sure that we live up to the full promise of that moment and actually get to see people, register to vote, engage, learn about the system, and hopefully make our communities better for everybody.
So, what is the largest factor contributing to voter disenfranchisement?
I think right now there's a lack of clarity around some of the process as it relates to at least people with convictions, trying to figure out whether they are or are not eligible. There was a legislation that was passed after the amendment was supported by 2/3 of the public in Florida. That required people to pay their financial obligations, their fees, their costs, things that run up the bill as you interact with the criminal justice system in our state. And we do not have a system in place yet where you can, with 100% certainty, know exactly how much you owe to every entity, and that has caused some challenges.
Okay, so you touched on this a little earlier before, but what are some legislative policies that your organization is currently pursuing in order to mitigate voter disenfranchisement?
Well, one, we are working to clarify the election system and provide real integrity in the process so that people can have confidence that they're voting, especially when you start talking about folks like ourselves who have past convictions. Nobody wants to go back. Nobody wants to get thrown back in the criminal justice system. We're seeing a lot of people who are sitting out, and that's not good for anybody, but we also believe in spending money to help get out in the community, right? And what we've seen is over the course of, in 2020, 2022, we believe in democracy. Then we fought long and hard to be a part of this process that can be challenging, can be tough, but it's a sacred thing. And so we think that we should spend money to get out in the community and remind people what a celebration it is to participate in democracy.
So, how successful have these legislative pursuits been, and what methods or scales do you use to quantify this success?
Well, I think we judge success by our people getting engaged in the process or not. And so, from that vantage point, Amendment 4 itself was a wild success. Working with the legislature to implement it, that was a little bit of some challenges thrown in there with opportunities. And now our recent efforts have been very challenging to try and get the state to engage and proactively spend more money to create a better pathway for individuals to walk into to participate in democracy here in the state. So as it relates to the citizens initiative and hearing 2/3 of the public resoundingly say, yes, we believe in second chances. We believe that, when you're done, you're done, so to speak. When your sentence is complete, you should be treated like anybody else. That's been very good. In terms of trying to kind of make this a high priority in our legislature, that can be sometimes challenging.
So, are there any laws that have hindered the movement against voter disenfranchisement?
There have been some laws, some recent laws that have uh, have tried to limit how much people's interaction. Whether that's kind of like an anti-protesting bill, is what some folks would call it, or what organizations can do as it relates to how you can help people get registered to vote or engaged in the process. So we have seen some efforts that do create hurdles for people to get engaged in self government. And But some of those have also been thrown out in the courts. So we see that give and take. Like the legislation is an expression, but we also have checks and balances and individual rights and things like that. And so we have seen that some of those efforts have backfired a little bit, and we know that that's a good thing because ultimately this is also kind of a cultural um, there's a cultural impact on this. When folks feel like their voice is going to be heard, when folks know that they've got an understanding of kind of who they're voting for, why they're voting, how this impacts them and their families, that's when you start to see more people get engaged. And we saw that in 2020, for instance, during the presidential election. We saw a dramatic increase, and we saw hundreds of thousands of people with felony convictions voting in the state of Florida. So we also know that there's a piece of this that it's like if there are candidates and there's a cause, and it's clear that people can get engaged, man, that's a powerful thing to see take place. In fact, we're kind of seeing it right now. Where it seemed that there were a lot of people who felt a little disaffected, even just 2, 3 months ago. And I'm not to go into, or we're kind of nonpartisan organization. We want everybody to vote. We want people to vote their conscience, and we don't really tell people, who to vote for or anything like that. But you can see it just playing out here that there's been a burst of energy, and that impacts. You see hundreds of thousands of people who want to volunteer. That more people want to be poll monitors and poll workers, and get into the guts of the whole process. And man, that is cool to see too.
So, what are the effects of voter disenfranchisement on civic engagement and democracy?
I think one of the big impacts is that it the people who have the most barriers to vote um, are the ones who are most hurt by this, right? So it's like even one policy that seems a little bit benign for somebody who can just walk up the street and get their voter ID out and go vote. That might be a little bit different than what the experience is like for somebody else who has to jump on the bus to go vote, and they don't have an ID. So it's like there are different barriers that can make these things challenging. And what we see are that the people who are most disenfranchised in society are the ones who then end up not voting, and we lose a voice, we lose a perspective in our society, and that hurts us ultimately, because we think this whole process works best when everybody voice is equal, everybody has a shot to speak through the ballot box. And when we take away, in particular, vulnerable populations because of added barriers to voting, we lose a key voice in our society.
Can you think of any recent specific cases of voter disenfranchisement?
Yeah, gosh, we in 2022 here in Florida, we were in a situation in which we started to have individuals getting arrested for voting, and it had this just chilling effect, right? I never want to go through another election cycle like that. I mean, these are people who have had put in their time. Um, they were accused of fraudulent activity as if they knew that they weren't eligible, when actually they got a voter ID card sent to them by the same government who arrested them, and uh, they thought that they were able to vote. And what happened is all across the community, people who with past convictions were suddenly deciding, hey, if I'm not 100% sure, if I don't have something in writing, if I haven't talked to an attorney, I am just not voting. And oh my goodness, that was very, very distressing and depressing. Because ultimately we shouldn't have a system in which a maybe turns into a no. And we saw that in 2022, and have been working to try and make things a little bit better, step at a time, a day at a time, since that moment.
So, that's all the questions I have prepared, but do you have any other lasting thoughts that you want to share?
Yeah, I think if there's anybody who's watching or listening, what I've seen over the course of kind of all my activity and my advocacy around democracy issues and getting people engaged is that one person can make a difference. One person who goes to try and change a policy, one person who goes to be a poll monitor and be involved in the process, or somebody who does some research or engages in a political campaign, that one person can make a difference. So I really appreciate it. It's cool to just kind of reach out and connect with you, see what you're doing, and how you're using your voice. And so at the end of the day, for me, it really is if somebody's watching, somebody's listening, and you're just kind of like, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do or how, how it works out. I encourage you to bust through all that. Like if you're feeling something, that means this might be the space for you. And we need people, because at the end of the day, this is a flesh and blood democracy that we live in, and it requires people and active people to make sure that things work the way that they do.
Thank you for listening to the Global View podcast. Tune in next week for another episode.